I am back with a new video, and this one is going to be about the last evening I spent with my shopping bike. Obviously this bike is no match to what I have at home, but I paid only about $100 for it. It is locally made and definitely one of the lowest quality bikes that you can imagine. But the point is not, this is not a collector's item, so it's not something you would want to keep for many years. For me, it was just for the trip. Paying $100 for 6 or 7 weeks of using it seemed like a better deal than to rent a motorized scooter, which would have been probably around $120, $150 per month, plus gasoline, plus whatever tickets you would be getting. And the Phuket government and the police have changed a lot during the last 10 years. Now they have all kinds of excuses to pull you over. They want you to have an international driver license, for example. And so having or renting a gasoline scooter is not such a good idea, even though that's what I used to do. I even brought my helmet. But in any case, this is a good way to compare a very basic design for a full-size bicycle with 28-inch wheels and 2-inch tires to something like the one I have, which is only a 16-inch very hard tire little bicycle, but it is so massively built up and the build quality is so much better that there's no comparison. But my bike at home, the project I wrote about in the book, is way more comfortable, is way more maneuverable. Perhaps the only thing I could say about this bike to its advantage is that because of the big wheels of the bicycle, if you get into a crack or a pothole, it doesn't have any suspension, but it's not such a big deal. So you do feel it, you do feel a big knock, but the bigger wheels are much more difficult to knock over. So, and as you can see there, I'm enjoying the last evening really. It's been raining like crazy for 3 weeks, and finally we have nice weather just a few days before my leaving. Typical. Hopefully I have 2 more months in Bangkok and there is a connection to a much less attractive but a much safer beach. The beach in the bay of the Siam is free of any tsunamis. It's way up in the bay, so it's not the open ocean. This is the open ocean. Quite shallow, but tsunamis come and supposedly every 20 years. So the last one was in 2003, and this one is about to hit. Hopefully it's not going to be as severe, but they usually do get a big wave. Now you can see here, this thing has a pad for a passenger and even foot pegs, which is very thoughtful and I guess a great thing to have, but the way it's installed is just too wobbly for anything more than a child. The only thing you can do is put on a fairly lightweight child for it really. On the other hand, it has a motorcycle like support, so you can park it very much like you would any kind of scooters, and sometimes I would just line it up with the motorized scooters and put a small log that I bought into the wheel, and that is safe in this town. As far as the rest is concerned, the brakes are terrible. There is a caliper brake in the front and it is not a V-brake, and very cheap. So the first thing I did was I replaced the pads, and that improved things a lot. The rear brake is really feeble. It's a drum brake. I usually used to get pretty decent results with drum brakes when I was younger and I had bicycles like that, but this one is just very cheaply made. I mean, what do you expect for $100? I was also getting what is called normally a wide or medium wide saddle, so my seat bones would be close to the edge, but they were sitting on the seat. which was great. They had some mountain bikes, but because of the narrow seats and the lack of the front box and the mud guards, I did not buy that one. This one, it has the front basket, very useful, incredibly useful. It has a belt. I bought a little LED light, not for the rear where I have a bit of reflection, but mostly for the front, so that when people jump off the sidewalk and try to run across, that at least they would see that somebody's there. And also riding onto the walking street, they have this main street called Bangla, which is full of people walking around, but people go in there with motorized scooters sometimes before 6 o'clock, even with a smaller truck, like one of those mini trucks. So traffic here is not like in New York. It's a total chaos. All kinds of vehicles go everywhere in every direction. So you really have to be careful. The crank pedal, very simple, but I had decent protection from the puddles. Because of the ton of rain, even when it was relatively dry, the road was never dry. So after the rain you would ride out, and it was really useful to have the mud guards, to have the chain guard, all of that stuff. Unfortunately, you could see the cheap steel on it because after the few days of raining, rust began to show up. So this is not stainless steel, and I'm hoping the new owner would get a new chain for it. I would get a new rear brake as well. I mean, if I was to keep this bike, and because it's a steel frame bike, even though not nicely put together, the weldings are not nice, the joints are not nice, it's still going to be a very sturdy frame that could last for decades, really. What I would do with it, I would replace the brakes, both front and rear. I'm not sure if you could get some kind of a transmission. I mean, ideally I would get a hub gear for the rear, although that would be the priciest of upgrades. But it would solve so many problems. The area is hilly. The towns like Patong are in valleys, but if you want to get to the next beach or the next village, you have to climb mountains, and that's never easy, even with the gears. And this bike has no gears, so I did climb several of these mountains, but I had to push the bike up. And on the way down, the brakes were just scary underpowered. So I did ride the bike down, but it was like a really scary thing. And it's amazing, even with the cheap bike, how much speed you would pick up. There was a lot of speed on this thing, maybe 35 miles an hour, I would say, even with me hitting the brakes, not to mention not hitting them. So this is one type of bicycle. I saw very few bikes in this town. Almost everybody is on the scooter, and I kind of understand that you have to go over the hill, and that would be one reason. But just for locally running around in town or in a village, a bicycle is actually much better. It's easier to park, it's easier to fit into anything, but hardly anybody is using it. Everybody is buying the most expensive scooter they can afford, just as the average American will have a crossover or SUV. Even if they are working from home, they're not going anywhere, they don't really need it, but they just have to have it. There's this kind of mania around the world that everybody has to spend the maximum on some kind of a private transportation, even if they are not going anywhere. So, by the way, this bike was turned over to a local. I befriended a woman who seems to be a town employee. She works in this park, in the town beach park, and I'm not sure what she's doing, but I wanted to give the bike up to somebody, not just abandon it on the street, but give it to somebody who seems to be deserving. And this is the person who received the bicycle. I also bought a very good floor pump, a sturdy floor pump, and a small lock. It's just a cable lock, but I think it's good to have, and the LED light. So I think this bike is pretty much fully equipped, and I think this person is going to make good use of it. So I think it all ended well. Not sure if I'm gonna get something in Bangkok. It's kind of tempting because when you buy something for $100, it can easily last. I mean, it's definitely going to last for 2 months, and I'm planning 2 months in Bangkok. And it's much cheaper than renting any kind of a motorized scooter. The only problem is you can't really ride during the day for a long period of time because the sun is so strong. At least not with my light skin. What you can do is to ride early in the morning, or like just after dawn, or just before sunset. A couple of hours after dawn and a couple of hours before sunset. So I don't know what's going to happen in Bangkok, but I'll definitely let you know.
I'll be back.